Hi there. There's a reason this video caught your attention. Maybe you've been around someone who made you question your own words, your tone, your memories, even your worth. Maybe you've noticed that you apologize too often, that you freeze when someone is quiet, or that you bend yourself to keep others comfortable. That pattern doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's usually born from years of walking on emotional eggshells, often under the influence of someone who demanded control, admiration, or perfection. And when that someone is a narcissistic woman, the damage often hides in plain sight. This video isn't about blame. It's about clarity. It's about understanding why your communication feels different, guarded, anxious, overly careful, and why that's not weakness, but survival. By the end, you'll see how 6 subtle habits can reveal the invisible scars left by narcissistic abuse, and how recognizing them is the first step to taking back your voice. Because what you've learned wasn't your fault, but what you unlearn next will be your freedom. For someone who has been emotionally punished through silence, ignored, excluded, or treated as if they didn't exist, quiet moments can feel unbearable. Silence, in that past context, wasn't peaceful. It was dangerous. It meant withdrawal, rejection, or the cold shadow of control. It taught the nervous system to associate quiet, not with calm, but with loss. Loss of safety, connection, and love. Over time, that conditioning becomes automatic. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. So now, when a friend takes too long to reply, or when someone becomes distant, the old alarm bells go off. The mind races to fill in the blanks, searching for the mistake that must have caused the silence. There's a flood of anxiety, a sharp rush of self-blame, and a frantic urge to fix something, even when nothing is actually broken. What looks like overreacting from the outside is, in truth, a survival response. The nervous system has learned that silence is not neutral. It's a signal of danger. This fear often shows up in subtle ways, constantly checking messages, rereading conversations, or apologizing repeatedly for small things. It's not about neediness or drama. It's about protection. The person isn't reacting to the present moment, but to a history in which silence was weaponized. Their body is still trying to prevent the pain of being ignored, of feeling invisible again. Healing this fear takes patience and awareness. It means slowly teaching the body that quiet can be safe, that not every pause means rejection. Over time, through consistent and gentle experiences of calm silence, the nervous system can learn a new truth, that peace can exist without fear, and that love does not always need words to be real. People who have been manipulated or emotionally controlled, often by a narcissistic woman or caregiver, tend to carry a deep, invisible rule. Needing help is dangerous. Somewhere along the line, they learned that asking for anything, attention, support, or even basic kindness, would be twisted into weakness or used against them later. Every request became an emotional debt, something to be paid back with guilt, shame, or humiliation, so they stopped asking altogether. With time, this pattern becomes a kind of armor. They convince themselves that independence is safety, that being self-sufficient is the only way to avoid being hurt. They push through exhaustion, take on too much, and tell themselves that needing others is a burden. Outwardly, they seem strong and capable. Inwardly, they are carrying the weight of never feeling safe enough to rely on anyone. In conversation, this conditioning often shows up subtly. They brush off offers of help with a smile. Say, "I've got it," or "Don't worry, I can handle it," even when they're overwhelmed. Beneath those words lies an unspoken fear that accepting care will lead to rejection, or that vulnerability will invite judgment. They don't truly believe they deserve kindness without paying for it somehow. But this kind of self-reliance is not empowerment. It's survival dressed as strength. It's what happens when someone learns the connection comes with a cost. True healing begins when that belief is challenged, when they experience relationships where help isn't a trap and care isn't conditional. Little by little, they learn that needing others is not a flaw in character, but a part of being human. To ask for help is not to surrender power. It's to acknowledge our shared humanity. It is an act of trust, a quiet rebellion against the old voice that once said, "You must never need anyone." When someone grows up or lives under the emotional control of a narcissistic person, harmony becomes a form of survival. Every word, tone, and expression is carefully measured to avoid conflict. Disagreement feels dangerous, and disapproval feels unbearable. So they learn to smooth over tension before it ever fully forms, to keep the emotional atmosphere calm at any cost. Over time, this turns into an automatic reflex. They become the peacemaker in every room, the one who senses discomfort before anyone else does and rushes to ease it. They adjust their tone to sound softer, laugh at jokes that sting, or swallow their real opinions just to prevent an argument. Even in ordinary conversations, they smile when they're hurting, apologize when they've done nothing wrong, and carry the silent burden of keeping everyone else comfortable. To outsiders, this may look like kindness or diplomacy, but beneath it lies exhaustion. The kind that comes from constantly monitoring other people's moods to stay safe. Their nervous system has been trained to equate calm with safety and tension with threat. This isn't manipulation, it's muscle memory. Their body remembers that peacekeeping once kept them from emotional harm. Their voice learned to soothe because it had to. Yet the very skill that once protected them can later become a cage. Always accommodating others leaves little room for authenticity. It becomes difficult to build relationships where honesty, disagreement, and vulnerability are welcome. The fear of upsetting someone keeps them trapped in politeness, even when silence costs them their truth. Healing begins when they realize that real safety isn't found in keeping everyone else happy. It's found in being genuine, even when that risks discomfort. Learning to speak up, to express anger or need without apology, is not rebellion. It's recovery. True connection doesn't depend on constant calm. It depends on being real. Sorry becomes a default setting, a small, automatic shield against potential anger. It slips out for everything. For speaking up, for asking questions, for taking up space, even for existing too loudly. These apologies aren't expressions of politeness. They're expressions of fear, a learned strategy for staying safe around someone whose moods once ruled the room. When you've lived with a person whose approval could vanish in an instant, every word feels like a risk. Apologizing becomes a way to soften your presence, to make yourself less threatening, less noticeable. It's an attempt to preempt punishment, to keep the peace before anything can go wrong. In that environment, sorry isn't just a word. It's a form of emotional armor. But the cost of this constant self-shrinking is heavy. Over time, each reflexive apology chips away at self-trust. The person begins to doubt their right to speak, to need, or to simply be. They start to move through the world as if they are an inconvenience to others, apologizing not only for mistakes, but for their existence itself. Their posture, tone, and presence all carry the quiet message: I promise I won't be too much. Healing begins with awareness, noticing when sorry appears not out of care, but out of fear. It means gently replacing apology with authenticity. Thank you for waiting, instead of sorry I'm late. I'd like to share something, instead of sorry for talking too much. These small shifts teach the body a new truth, that it's safe to take up space, to have needs, to exist without justification. Learning to stop apologizing for being yourself isn't arrogance. It's reclamation. It's the slow, courageous act of standing in your own story, without shrinking, without flinching, and without saying sorry, just for being here. Under the influence of a narcissistic abuser, boundaries are often twisted into something shameful. Saying no is painted as selfish. Expressing limits is framed as ungrateful or disrespectful. Over time, the message sinks in. Your comfort doesn't matter. Your needs are an inconvenience, and protecting yourself will only bring punishment. Eventually, silence feels safer than honesty. Even after the abuse ends, that fear lingers. The body remembers the tension that followed every attempt to assert a limit. So, instead of speaking up, the person smiles and nods. They agree to things they don't want, stay quiet when something feels wrong, and carry resentment in silence, all in the name of keeping the peace. They've learned to disappear just enough to survive. But boundaries are not walls meant to shut people out. They are doors that define where love and respect can safely enter. They are not acts of aggression, but acts of self-recognition. A way of saying, this is who I am, and this is what I can hold. Setting them does not destroy relationships. It clarifies them. It separates those who love your freedom from those who only loved your compliance. Relearning to say no is not rebellion. It's recovery. It's a quiet declaration that your needs are not dangerous and your voice is not a threat. Each time you speak a boundary, you teach your nervous system a new truth. Safety does not come from silence. It comes from self-respect. To honor your limits is to honor your humanity. It's not closing the door on love. It's opening it to the kind that doesn't ask you to disappear. What often looks like oversensitivity is, in truth, the echo of long-term verbal assault. When someone has lived under the emotional dominance of a narcissistic person, especially one who wielded words like weapons, even the smallest mistake could lead to humiliation, ridicule, or withdrawal of affection. Criticism wasn't guidance. It was punishment. It was how love turned conditional. After enduring that kind of environment, the body learns to equate correction with danger. Even gentle feedback can feel like an attack. The moment someone points out an error or difference of opinion, the nervous system floods with alarm. The heart races, the stomach tightens, and the mind scrambles to explain, defend, or apologize. It's not about ego. It's about survival. The body is trying to prevent the shame and rejection it once knew too well. This isn't fragility. It's trauma. The nervous system has been conditioned to recognize criticism as a threat to safety. Years of walking on eggshells rewired the brain to anticipate harm at the first sign of disapproval. The reflex to over-explain or withdraw isn't weakness. It's the body's way of saying, I remember what happened last time. Healing this response requires a slow relearning of trust. It means finding spaces, relationships, friendships, therapy, where feedback is delivered with kindness and safety, not control, where disagreement isn't a trap and mistakes don't lead to punishment. Gradually, the body begins to understand that not all criticism is a knife. Some of it can be a bridge. True healing happens when feedback no longer feels like a threat, but an invitation to understand, to connect, to grow. When the nervous system finally believes, I can be imperfect and still be safe. Every one of these patterns, the apologizing, the silence, the pleasing, grew from a single seed, survival. These habits once protected the person from emotional explosions, manipulation, or rejection. When someone has been abused by a narcissistic woman, their communication style becomes an armor. They talk carefully, move gently, and feel deeply responsible for the emotions of others. But armor, no matter how protective, is also heavy. It keeps the person safe, yet distant from their own truth. Healing is not about becoming louder or bolder overnight. It's about remembering that words are not weapons, and silence is not punishment anymore. It's about reclaiming the voice that once trembled. Recovery begins in small moments. It starts when someone feels safe enough to speak without rehearsing every word, when they can sit in silence without panic, when sorry turns into thank you, when they finally believe that asking for help doesn't make them a burden. Reclaiming one's voice after narcissistic abuse is a gentle rebellion, a quiet revolution against the years of control. It's a return to authenticity, to the right to feel, to the freedom of imperfect conversation. No one deserves to live inside the fear of words. Everyone deserves to speak, to be heard, and to be safe while doing so. If you recognize these patterns in yourself, remember this: you are not broken. You adapted. You learned to survive in a world that punished honesty. And now, you have the power to unlearn. Slowly, compassionately. Your voice is still yours. It may be quiet right now, but it has never disappeared. With patience and gentleness, it will grow stronger again. You deserve relationships where silence is peaceful, where help is mutual, where honesty is safe. And as you heal, every word you speak becomes a step toward freedom. Not from others, but toward yourself. And as always, because YouTube's algorithm tends to favor videos with strong engagement, if you feel this video has brought you value, a simple like and a quick subscribe would mean so much. It not only helps this message reach more people who need it, but also ensures you will never miss the next video that could make a difference in your journey. Thanks all.